Hey, welcome to this first video in this series. This is the backstage pass area. So my name's Mijo Biscan, of course. And yeah, thanks for checking this out. Thanks for being here. I wanted to do this video series from the survey that I sent out recently, getting feedback on what people are interested in, what you want to learn more about. And so I've put together this little video series where we're going to go a little bit deeper into what I do, and hopefully it's quite interesting for you to go get a bit more of an insight into what an artist does day to day. But the main things we're going to kind of look at is people were really interested in learning about the creative process, where songs come from, how I tap into creativity and creative flow. It's quite a mysterious thing, so I'm going to talk about that in this video. And then I'm going to talk about songwriting. I'm actually going to write a song with you. We're going to make a video where I write a song on the spot and I talk through how I'm doing it. So kind of show you behind the curtain, peek behind the curtain, under the hood as to how I do that. And I'm going to talk about live performance and how I get ready to do that and what that's all about, and a couple of the pre-gig rituals that I do to get me in the zone. And then I'll also talk about a backstage pass idea of doing more of these videos together and making an awesome thing together. So, but I'm going to get into talking about creativity. I want to keep these videos relatively short, but they're probably going to go 20, 30 minutes or something, just so you can kind of allow some time to get in and enjoy them. And the reason I'm doing that is because I can do little short videos on social media, but I really wanted to, with this community, dive deeper into kind of what I do and give you a bit more of an insight, a bit more to chew on. So it's going to be a little bit longer form kind of thing, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm also going to play you a song live right here. Got my guitar, tuned it up, ready to go. So just before I get started, there are a couple of things you can do if you like. You'll see on this screen, you can actually download a little workbook sort of thing that I've put together about creativity, because I also run workshops on creativity and I work with artists all the time. And so I put together a couple of like exercises and stuff in there if you want to play with some of these tools yourself and expand your creativity. There are real ways of doing that. And so that brings me to sort of talk about creativity and what it is and why it's a challenge and why it's so mysterious. So the creative process is a mysterious process. But when I think about being an artist, it's absolutely crucial to know how it works. It's sort of like if someone was learning to become a builder and they rocked up to work and their foreman or whatever never showed them how to use the tools. Never said, this is a hammer, this is a drill, this is a drop saw, this is how you do this, this is how you get those angles right and all of that stuff. Then that person would go out into the world and build a house that's just like falls apart. And in the early days of me writing songs, that's really what I was doing. I was kind of just trying to figure it all out. But when it comes to writing songs, creativity is the main tool that you really use. There's lots of other things like having, listen to lots of music and having a bit of a reference of, what you want to do. But creativity is the tool. So one of the reasons it's mysterious is it's an invisible tool. It's not like a hammer where you can pick it up and someone can show you how to do it like this and you can watch them and you can mimic them. With songwriting, it's an internal process, so it's invisible, which makes it a little bit harder. But there are lots of books on creativity. It's been studied on a psychological level for a long time. There are books on songwriting, all of that stuff. But an important part of creativity is to get in and do it. It's one of those things that, well, like any skill, it can't develop unless you get in and do it. But anyway, So that's one of the reasons it's mysterious. Another reason it's mysterious is because of marketing. So managers and record labels and publicists, when they release a record, they have to build a story around it. And one good way of doing it is by making that artist seem like they're some kind of creative genius and creative freak. And it sort of separates them from us. And we think, oh, you know, that person's creative and I'm not. But that's not true. Everyone has the hardware in your brain to be creative. It's just like a muscle and a skill you can develop. Just like how you learnt to read and write and do simple maths, you can learn to be more creative. So I'll tell you a little bit about my own creative sort of journey and how I now have the confidence to be creative whenever I want. That wasn't something I ever had before. It was like I was waiting for inspiration all the time. It was my only method of songwriting was inspiration, which is why I love the Picasso quote where it says, "Inspiration exists, but it needs to find you working, or it has to find you working." And I just find that to be absolutely true. When I'm in the flow of doing creative work, that's when more ideas come and I can complete songs, and then that gives me more ideas, and it kind of has this momentum to it. So one of the best frameworks I've heard about creativity comes from John Cleese from the Monty Python. He sort of talks about creativity being in this open mode. So he talks about the closed mode and the open mode. And to get into the open mode, to be creative, it really is like a mode we can go into. I'm sure you've had experiences where you've been in a more open and creative mode. So he puts it down to these 5 things. So he says you need space. So you need to create a space where you're not going to be interrupted, which is why I have my little studio here where I kind of shut that door and I create this little space where I can explore and play without the fear of, you know, sounding bad or making mistakes or whatever, because it's just me and, you know, I'm just allowed to do that. So and then the second one is time. So it's not enough to create space. You have to create that space for a specific period of time. So when I'm doing a songwriting session, the times vary, but normally I go for about an hour. That's a decent chunk of time to sort of get in and go through the process and make progress. So you need to make I need to make a defined space in time. And then the third step is also time. But this is the idea that you need to have time. The idea needs to have time to develop as well. So not just a block of time, but, you know, it might need a week. You might need a week to finish it, or 2 weeks or whatever. But time is very central to creativity. And the fourth one is confidence. That when I sit down, I need to be in a state of confidence that I can do this, that I can have ideas, that I have interesting ideas, that I've come up with songs before. And it's really just tapping into the idea that this is something I know how to do, and I'm going to get in and do it. And then the fifth one, he says, is humor. The main evolutionary significance of humor is that it gets us from the closed mode to the open mode quicker than anything else. And I guess we all kind of know that if you're having an argument with someone and then they crack, you can kind of get into this thing where you're trying to drill your point home or something, and then they make a joke and you both crack up, and it just creates this open mode, creates this sort of space. So he says humor is important. I don't use a lot of humor in my songwriting to get in the open mode, but he obviously wants to put humor in there because he's a comedian. Yes. So in order for this video to not balloon out to go for like an hour. I wanted to talk about one of the absolute best tools I have that gets me into a creative state. And this really is, it's like a magic trick. It's like a magic spell. And if you're a creative of any kind, I highly recommend that you use this, you do this, because it works every time. It's almost like it's impossible for it to not work. And, I'll explain why in a second. So when we're looking at creativity, I know that I've had creative moments in the past. I've had those moments of inspiration. And so it's sort of about re-engineering or reverse engineering how I got into that creative zone. Sometimes it just happens by accident. And so this process helps me to re-engineer or reverse engineer how I got into that space so that I can do it at will. I can do it within 30 seconds. I can sort of be in a far more open, creative space. And that's where the creativity is allowed to flow, or the creativity can just come up and come through. So the first part is like whatever my body is doing, my physiology. So how I'm sitting, how I'm breathing, the muscles in my face, all of these things. I know that when I'm in a creative, when I thought back to, okay, what's my body doing when I'm in a creative state of mind? And I realized, okay, well, I'm normally actually really quite relaxed. My breathing is really calm. I'm normally either kind of looking down and sort of becoming introspective in a way, sort of looking inwards even. But my eyes are normally either looking down or I'm looking out at a big scene that's quite open. So I tend to like to look out the window and sort of just daydream and look at nature and get very present. And I'm normally just in a relaxed state. So that was the first part, is just physiology. What's my body doing? Then the second one is imagery. What are the images that I'm seeing in my mind? Because we think in images as human beings. If I say to you, try not to picture the Statue of Liberty. As soon as I say it, the image comes into your mind. You can't help it. You can't control it. And so we have this internal, theatre, cinema happening all the time. So when it comes to creative work, I had to think back, okay, what's normally the imagery that I tend to engage with when I'm songwriting? So I reflected on that and I thought, well, it's normally memories, or it's a story, like a narrative, or maybe it is an actual picture, or I'm replaying a part of a movie. And that normally helps me to start connecting with that moment and that idea and the emotions around it and things like that. And then the third part of this is like the creativity triad, is what's the language that I'm using? How do I use language when I'm in a creative state? And then I realized that when I'm writing songs, the language I use is different to just how I'm talking right now. The language is more poetic. It's more descriptive. Most of the time it has to rhyme, or it doesn't have to rhyme, but it does rhyme. It kind of comes in these phrases, these 2-line phrases. And it's emotive, and it also is very descriptive of the imagery. I tend to really love to describe the imagery that I'm seeing. So these are the 3 things and so when I know what my body's doing, what imagery I normally am thinking of, and the type of language that I use, that's all I need to do. I just need to tap into those 3 things. So whenever I come to do a songwriting session, I spend the first couple of minutes just going through those things. my physiology, the imagery, and the language. And I literally sit in my chair here and I just go through it in my mind. Okay, my body's relaxed. I'm sort of, looking at the ground, or I'm looking outside. I'm feeling open. And then I start to think about the imagery. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can go through the Rolodex of my mind of some memories or some ideas or things that I'm thinking about, recently, and see what images come up. And then from that, I can start to describe it. So basically, when I'm songwriting, I'm writing the song before I've even touched the guitar. I'm sort of entering the portal of the song and getting into this creative world, this creative landscape. And then a lot of the song is already there. The imagery there, some of the language is starting to come, some of the lyrics or whatever. And then normally comes a moment, and I'll talk more about this in the next session when I actually talk about how I do the songwriting part. But normally an idea will sort of solidify. There'll be like this vague thing, and then it will come together, and maybe like one phrase or a line that I think sums it all up will sort of go into this little package. And then that's normally when I'll either pick up the guitar or I'll start writing lyrics. So, and I'll talk more about that in the next video. But this is a little bit of an insight into how creativity works, how you can do this too. Like if you download the worksheet or the little workbook thing that I've made, you can go through and answer some of those questions, and there are a few other exercises and things if you're interested in doing that. But this thing of getting into creative flow is just so important for me that I really have had to spend a lot of time researching it and learning it and implementing it and really doing lots of practice. And like I said, in the beginning when I would go to write songs, it would normally freak me out because the idea wouldn't come, and then I'd get really self-conscious and really judgmental, and then I'd be like, oh, I can't do this. But after sort of learning, especially that technique and a number of other sort of techniques, it really has allowed me to feel very calm and very confident when I'm going to do creative work, and know that I can get into that open mode really whenever I need to. So it's less waiting around for that inspiration to strike, where I can get in and write songs, and that's all a practice. And there's a great Ernest Hemingway quote where he talks about the amount of material you have to generate as a creative person to really get to your good stuff. And he says 10 pages for the waste paper basket, 1 page for the book. So that's kind of his ratio. It's like a 10-to-1 ratio. And that seems about right with, when I've written songs. Once I've written about 10 songs, there's usually one that I feel like, oh, that's a strong song. And there's usually other ones in there that are okay. And then there's other ones that will never see the light of day. So I hope you found that interesting. I love talking about this. I literally could talk for another hour. If you want to learn more about this, please let me know in the comments below. Just say, I would love to know more about creativity. And apart from that, also let me know in the comments below. I really would love to hear from you. What did you find most interesting about this? Was there an insight about creativity that you had that you never thought of before? Is there anything else you'd like to explore about creativity? Would you like me to share more tools? And then the second part is I'd love for you to use some of the tools that are in the little worksheet, and let all of us know in the comments below what your experience was like. I would love for you to do that little creativity triad of thinking back, getting into that open mode and, doing some creative work. Maybe you like drawing, maybe you like writing, maybe you're a musician. And you want to just write a bit of a song. I'd love to hear your feedback on you know, what happens when you use this little process, because I think it's absolute gold. Awesome. Thanks so much for checking this out. I'll be sending out another video in a couple of days, which is going to be all about songwriting, the songwriting process. And I'm gonna write a song with you on the spot. We're gonna just make something up, and so I can show you the ins and outs of how that works. But before we go, I'm gonna play you a song just for coming. And this song is called Phantoms of the Human Blues. And I wanted to play this song because this is a song that I actually had a lot of trouble writing. I got stuck on it quite a bit. And so I'll talk about it more in the next video, how it all came together. And here it is, called Phantoms of the Human Blues. You can also get a free download of this on this page as well. You can get a free MP3 of this. So you can have a copy of it from the Golden Moment album. And here it is. You can enjoy some being serenaded. Well, this rock came smashing through my window with a little letter attached by a piece of string. I keep getting these strange invitations by a phantom requesting my pursuit of him. Once I get his scent, I begin to think this is my idea from the very beginning. And it's signed by the phantoms of love, freedom, grace, abstinence, and my very own name as I stroll through the alley. And I sense them in the sewer beneath as I dive deep down to the coral. Their shadows move among the reef, evading me. So I write, return to sender. Now the postmaster is bent and confused. He'll have a challenge getting back and beyond the reaches of the known universe. 'Cause out there beyond where thought comes from, to see the phantoms, emotional hues. None is more devastating to the eye than all of these human blues. As I stroll through the valley, and I hear their voices coming from the mountains. Some peak, I see them sailing across the ocean skin without me. I again write, return to sender. Now the postmaster, still bent and confused. He'll have a challenge getting back and beyond the reaches of the known universe. 'Cause out there beyond where love comes from, you see the phantoms, emotional hues. None is more devastating to the eye. All of these human blues. There you go. Well, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed that and really look forward to seeing you in the next video. So keep your eye out on your inbox and leave us a comment below and I'll chat to you soon. Thanks. Bye.